Hi, welcome to Start Making. I'm Mark. Have you ever wondered what a small channel like mine makes off YouTube ad revenue? The truth is, it's not a lot. But in the last 7 months, I have made enough to buy myself a new tool. And in true social media fashion, I asked you guys what I should get. You had a choice between a random orbital sander and a trim router. And you chose this. And you chose this. This is the MAKITA trim router. And during this video, I'm going to show you what's in the box and what you get for the package. A package that I paid this much for. And by the end of it, I'm going to have tested some of it and I'll let you know what I think of the initial impressions. Remember, you're watching someone who has never used a router before in their life, and I confess, I'm a little bit intimidated by it. And for that reason, I'm going to make this. This is what's going to give me the confidence to learn how to use my router, and it is super simple to build. I'm going to whiz through that build, and at the end of it, I'm going to tell you what I think of the router. But before we get to this exciting build, let's have a look what's in the box. On the outside, I love these MAKITA carry boxes. I feel like I could drop things on them and nothing inside is getting damaged. Some dust collection accessories, the router itself, edge guide, plunge base, spanners, I don't know what that one is, offset base, something. Instead of foam, padding, packing, they give you a shopping bag. Oh, it's a tilt base. Why do I need a tilt base? I think we need to simplify this a bit and take it one little chunk at a time. For now, I don't think I'm going to use the offset base, the tilt guide, the trim guide, and potentially not the handle. I'm still a little bit nervous. I have popped a bit in this and I've got the battery on it. I've read the instructions. I'm just going to grab a piece of wood and just see if I can get this to work. Okay, that wasn't a lot and I was nervous. I did notice one thing though. This is going to need dust extraction. I think that is really sturdy and is going to make a big difference. I'm going to try another test cut with the hoover attached. I'm going to be using the MAKITA portable hoover. Hoover on. Don't worry, if you haven't seen one of these before, I'm going to do a full review on this when I've got all the testing done with lots of different tools. Okay, so all in all, that first test went well. I didn't feel too intimidated. However, we can all agree this is the most dangerous part of any router. So, if I'm using it handheld, I feel like I've only got one hand on the piece, one hand on the machine, and that's fine once you get used to things and once you're practiced. If we can do anything that locks this down, or locks our workpiece down, we free up a hand straight away. In this situation, I'm going to lock this down, and that is where the table you saw at the start is going to come into play. It's going to give me confidence that all I have to focus on is where are my hands, not as much where is the machine, because that's not moving anywhere. Now, the router table that I've decided to build is a really easy one, and it is super beginner friendly and doesn't take a huge amount of big tools to do. Do bear in mind though that if you want to make it even easier, all you need is a piece of plywood with a hole in it, and you can screw the router upside down underneath it, clamp the wood to the side of your desk, and away you go. I just want to take it one step further to give it a bit more stability and a little bit of storage. You'll see what I mean. So, because we're making it a little bit more detailed than just a piece of wood, I bought myself a little red plate that sits in it. And I've got to route out the area so that this plate sits flush within the wood. It's not as easy as it looks for the first time user of a router. So first things first, let's give the table insert a test, make sure that it is compatible with this particular router. The advert said it was, but you never know. And then from there, it's really simple. You just draw around it, and that's the area you're going to have to route out. And if you're like me, you don't clamp on your guide rails, and that's your first mistake. Cut a hole with a jigsaw so that the entirety of the router can come up from underneath, and it makes it much easier to fix it to the plate and take it away again. What I should really have done was measure it better. Now, I want to keep this honest all the way through. Have I got it flush? Yeah, there or thereabouts. You won't see it, but there is a very slight gap down that side. Oh yeah, there's another tiny gap down that side. A few places it got away from me. So to summarise, I did not do a good job of that at all. However, I'm going to leave it. This tool is just for use, it's not for display. And in all honesty, it only served to remind me that I haven't mastered this tool and that I shouldn't be complacent. Now my idea for this table is that it is deep enough so that there's a section at the back that you can clamp onto your workbench. But I also want to put it on legs so that it can be a table itself. Sounds daft, but when I've got such a limited space, I want it to cover both bases. I'm going to put some dados in and see if I can sink the legs into the piece a little bit better. Give it a bit more stability. What's the worst that can happen? Did you see the mistake? With a little bit of extra planning, I probably could have avoided that mistake. With the construction of the legs and the skirts that I'm going to add for a little bit of stability, I'm going to go with screws rather than glue at this stage in case I need to change anything, or if I need to remove the top in the future if I ding it, or if it gets cut into, or any of the other stupid things I tend to do to things that I make, then I can just replace it with another piece of plywood. And so there it is, we've got the basic form. From here we just need the fence at the back with the dust extraction, maybe a hole in the side to put the dust extraction through for underneath. Apart from that, this is pretty much good to go. But then sometimes you just have an idea that you haven't over-engineered it enough. And you think drawers, and then it starts to get away from you a little bit until what you have is a little bit more, well, you'll see. And then we've got to test it out. And why not test it out on the drawer fronts themselves? They're going to need a chamfer, and I just happen to have a bit that will do the job. This is going to work in a way like a MAKITA gauge would on a table saw. I want to make a groove for this so that it fits nice and tight. If it's a thin piece, you need to support it from behind with this, and with a perfect right angle, it means that I'm going to get perfect right angle dados, or whatever I want to put into the piece of wood. Okay, so now that we've completely over-engineered it, what I figure we need next is to put these T-tracks in so that we can have a handy fence at the back. Now, there's a good reason that I chose these particular runners. Admittedly, they're probably a bit deep for the 3/4 inch plywood, but they came with these aluminium blocks that you slide into each of the tracks. It can slide freely, and you can tighten it down, locking your fence to the table. If I put one of these on each side, I'm confident that the fence is going nowhere. I'll put a link in the description to one I've used, but I'm sure there are loads out there that would work just as well. I've got my 3 brace pieces into place, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of thin plywood to go over the top of the middle bit, because most of the dust is going to be created in this centre area, and then these will hold everything square, and that is pretty much that. I can show you this from a different perspective now that the glue has dried. I've used epoxy to fit in one of my Hoover attachments. I am yet to do the 2-in-1 piping for this. So the only test I can do is going to be with both extractors on at the same time, which is fine. And if I was doing a big job, that's what I'd be using. I just want to show you, I've got this onto my main dust extraction. I've got my portable one behind the unit going into the actual router itself. So I'm going to do some dados, or is it rabbits? Rebates. Anyway, I'm going to cut some grooves in a piece of wood, and I want to see how well the dust extraction actually works. Big dust extractor on. Small one on. I think the first thing to note is that was seriously loud. Dust collection. Got nothing there. And underneath, nothing there. This is going to be a game changer. I know that word gets thrown around a lot on YouTube, but for me, this is going to really open up a huge amount of better finishes and of building things that I just couldn't build before. Also, it looks a bit big here and a bit cumbersome within a big shed environment, but I already have a space picked out for it. And by happy coincidence, I mentioned at the start, you can clamp this to the edge of a table. That you can, because I've left enough space at the back to do that. And the back will sit flush with the front of your workbench, and that's fine. But I purposefully, when I kitted out this shed, I put shelves at the back that are the same height as my workbench. I didn't know why I was doing this. I thought maybe to support a piece of wood if I'm cutting it. But what I didn't realise was that actually it would support this perfectly between the table and the shelf. I'll show you. Shed. I've got my construction table here. I can do my cutting on my other workbench, and then I've got my router fixed between my shelf and my workbench, and I've got the dust collection underneath it. So now I have a really good workflow going on where I can work here and move the objects onto my workbench. And that is absolutely down to no planning on my part and just pure dumb luck. But sometimes you earn your own luck. I did not earn my own luck in this one. It was just luck. Still, I'll take it. If you have watched the video this far and you have got some really good use out of it, if there's some interesting features, or even if it's just a little bit entertaining, consider popping a like down for me. Comment, let me know whether I've got anything right or wrong here. Give me your opinions, I love them. And if you fancy subscribing, there's more videos like this on the channel. As for this, I'm going to finish off with just a few of my impressions from it, and I'll tell you at the end whether I actually really would buy something different given the choice. I have to say, from getting it out of the box to getting it working and to giving it a try was very easy. It's ergonomic, it's well balanced, and genuinely it was not intimidating to use, or not as intimidating as I thought it would be at the start. The dust extraction is phenomenal. Can't really comment on battery use because I never ran a battery down. Biggest negative with this is the depth control. You have the fully open catch here, and then you have the little wheel underneath it. Now, you can see just the weight of the attachment, you don't have enough friction to get the control for the micro adjustments that you might want to use. I'm not saying you can't have that with the plunge base, because I suspect you probably can. But for this, it's not good enough for doing really intricate work. So, once you've got your dust extraction on, and I have to use dust extraction, I just don't have any other way of clearing the air in the shed, whether it's static or whether it is just the design, you basically lose all visibility through this plastic window once the dust has kicked around for a certain amount of time. What I don't want is people to feel forced to take this off so they can see what they're doing, because then you're just getting a load of dust kicked up. On the base, you have this plate. It is quite small. I could have done with an extra inch on one side or maybe on the other. And I have noticed that there are replacement ones of these that now have a widened base. So I will be getting one of those very soon. I ran the machine along guide rails. I attached them to my work when I realised that was what I should be doing. And there are so many protrusions of the knobs or the screws that it makes it very difficult to get a positive connection with the guide rail and not to end up hitting one of these knobs and pushing yourself away and ruining what you're trying to do. Then you move it around to this side and unfortunately the dust collection gets in the way. I'm going to very quickly move over to the plunge base and I'm going to see if that solves the issue. I suspect it probably will. Then you lose the one-handed use. So you're going to have to weigh up whether it's worth all of these negatives in order to get a machine that works overall to the positive. So to summarise, and this is just my opinion, if you've got MAKITA batteries and you're already handcuffed by that platform, that's fine. This will then do a good job for you. If you have freedom of choice, I don't think this is going to be the best trim router for you. I have seen a lot where the depth gauge just alone is much better. I'm going to test out the plunge base because I think that will also solve some of my issues. And then I'm going to practice, and I'm going to use this a lot. And eventually I'll come back, and when I'm experienced enough, I'll give you some better feedback on what I think of this machine overall. There is one last vital tip that I want to give you, and ignore it if you've already figured your own routine out. But I noticed when I used mine that the dust collection was significantly louder than the machine. And a couple of times when I was holding it, when it wasn't in the table, I turned off the dust collection, and for some reason I didn't realise that the machine was still running because I had my earplugs in. So I think just purely because I was used to that level of noise that the dust collection was kicking out, there is a very easy scenario where I could have picked up the machine thinking it was off. So what I would suggest is always turn the machine off before the dust collection. Sounds silly, sounds so simple that you would never forget to do that, but if you always do it, you get it in as your muscle memory for your tasks in your workshop, you'll never have the issue that you might leave the machine on and accidentally get your hand too close to it. Get yourself a set of bits like this. This is brilliant. It's got all of the bits that I'm going to need in it. They're cheap. I'll leave a link down below for the one I've got. And I've just put them into a box on my French cleats. I'm going to wear these down, and the ones that I notice have worn down the quickest, I will then spend a decent amount of money replacing, so that I will have good ones are the ones I use the most often. For now, I don't know what I'm going to use. But put them in a nice box like that. You'll know where they are. You won't lose these. If you really like French cleat storage and you want to have a look at some of the other ones I've made, my portable bin for instance, I think this video is going to be a good one that will cover that, and there's other ones on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you over there.